Hey everyone, Kim Snyder here of Trained and Simple. I want to talk about resources, and one of the primary resources that you will find most helpful is the API documentation from Infusionsoft itself. And where you find that documentation is at help.infusionsoft.com, which I'm not there. Let me get there. help.infusionsoft.com, and then right here under developers. So when I say API documentation, I actually mean all of this. API basics, API services and methods, the forum, the table documentation, and a little bit less so the usage guidelines. But you will find yourself going to these three things quite a lot. So let me take you through them one at a time very quickly. So in API basics, the most important thing that you'll find here to me is the SDK, which I'm going to talk about later, but that's the software development kit. Those are the little code snippets that help you talk to the API. You'll download those here, and we give you instructions about what to do with them and how to put them on your server later on in the recipe called Connecting to the Infusionsoft API. But this is where you find it. Okay. The other thing that you may or may not need, depending on whether this has already been set up, is your API key. This is just instructions about how to get your API key, which we also give you those instructions in that Connecting to the Infusionsoft API recipe. But it's here. Quite honestly, I didn't find these when I was learning the API myself. I didn't find this documentation or code samples to be very helpful at all, which is why I created Train and Simple and the API Cookbook. But they're here for you if you want them. So that's what you'll find in API Basics. Now, getting down to the nitty gritty, much more useful is this API Services and Methods. So, services and methods, what does that mean? Well, the way to think about it just very quickly is a service is a grouping of code types, okay, or a grouping of functions, similar functions with talking to the API. So if you look down the services, I think you'll see what I mean. Here's the affiliate service, affiliate program service, contact service, data service, discount, email, file, funnel, invoice, order, product, search, shipping, and web form. So within each one of these services then, so we'll take contact service, are all the methods. And so the methods are the things that you can do with that service. So for contacts, managing contacts, you have these different methods. For example, add a contact, add that contact to a campaign, add a contact to a group, which is in an API world, that's a tag. Find a contact by their email, load, merge, pause campaign, remove from campaign. So these are all the things you can do with a contact in the contact service. And so each one of these, so let's just go to contact add, okay? The reason you'll go to this so often is, if you generally know what you're trying to do. Well, I'm trying to add a contact, or I'm trying to add a tag, or what have you. So when you go here, I mentioned the SDK, each one of these this is the long way, this is the hard way, this is long form, but these SDK samples, what you'll do with these are little shortcuts, little code snippets that, in this case, adds a contact to Infusionsoft. So that's why it's called contact service.add. Okay. So what you'll do, and you'll see, we'll do this many times in the different recipes. You'll actually take this sample code, you'll copy it, you'll paste it into your code document, and then we'll modify it some for whatever it is that we're actually trying to do. But these are your little building blocks that you will use. So you never have to remember all of this. You never have to write it from scratch. You just always go back here, find what it is that does what you're trying to do, and then copy and paste. So that's why you will use this so often, and I encourage you, over time you'll become very familiar with these things. But to come over here and poke around and see what all is in each one of these. Moving on, the developer forum, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. That is a forum where many of us both ask and answer questions for each other. So that's a resource for you. Now, table documentation is very similar to the service and methods. For those of you who are not so familiar with databases, basically Infusionsoft is a great big database, and all of the information that's contained in Infusionsoft, not only your information, but your settings, your users, everything, is all held in tables. And those tables are different types of tables, hold different information, and those tables are interrelated and connected by fields, usually some sort of an ID field. And you'll learn about that in a bit. But so here are all the tables. And again, these, for the most part, are kind of self-explanatory, right? Campaign step. This table holds individual follow-up sequence step data. Company, that's pretty obvious. Contact action. This table holds data for tasks, notes, and appointments, etc. So this list gives you all the tables. And if you go into one of them, again, we'll go into contact because that's the one that you will probably use most, it will give you a list of all the fields and what you can do, a type of field, and what you can do with it. So if you start to scroll down, address, assistant, billing information, birthday, city, company, right? Company ID, email, etc. Every single one of these is a field within that table that is accessible to you through the API. And so you will use this quite a lot to get the proper field names, figure out which field is in what table, so on and so forth. So that's the table documentation. Very, very, very useful. And then finally here you have usage guidelines. Not so much. Okay, so that is your Infusionsoft API documentation, where to find it, and what it can do for you.